You are listening to Information and Inspiration with Jen Julius, helping you take control of your own life by finding clarity, improving your communication, and building confidence to achieve your goals. For more information about me and my guest, you can go to jenjulius.com and check out the On the Radio tab. Today, I have Cindy Jarrett, and this is a part 2, actually, of a 2-part series about conscious dating. I'm so excited. And she is the owner of Designing Access Consulting. She's a shamanic practitioner, co-founder of Horse Journeys Center for Conscious Evolution, and author of Path of the Golden Heart, Conscious Dating in an Unconscious World. If you're listening to the recording of this, then you can absolutely check out part 1, which you may want to start with. This is part 2 of exploring the meaning and results of conscious dating. So, Cindy, I'm just so excited to have you back in the studio. Thank you so much for being here 2 shows in a row.
Thank you very much. It's fun.
And I would love to just have a short recap of just tell us a little bit, the mini version of who you are. And then I'd love a recap of kind of what we talked about in part 1.
Great. Well, I'm a communications and relationship consultant for the last 27 years, and it really came about because I was in some very high-functioning communities and spiritual communities, and I saw people struggling with love, and I just have a very large toolkit. It's all that I read and study and what I've invested thousands of hours and thousands of dollars in terms of emotional education and development. And I really began to put 2 and 2 together, that this is really key in all our relationship needs. So that's kind of me. I've invested a lot as a student, and I've invested a lot as a teacher in bringing people to having great and wonderful and sustaining relationships. And that's my passion, and that's what I provide. So that's me in that regard.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that you could also recap a little bit of what we talked about last time in part 1.
Yeah, I think one of the things in the conscious dating work, so how I came about doing this conscious dating work is I got a lightning bolt one day of when I was out of a relationship, and I decided, I really want my soulmate. I want my partner. And not everybody wants a soulmate. Not everybody's ready, and that's okay. But I was really, really ready. And so I collaborated and cahooted with Spirit, and I was able to do some meditation, some other things, and I got very clear who this person was. And then that turned into one of the first training pieces I did in my consulting work, and what I offered as a service was to help people consciously date and draw in and create their soulmate relationships. And it
sounds like a small task. Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's so then I put together the training program, and then people said, "Hey, you gotta get this to more people." And so I started the courses, and then my students in the courses said, "Hey, you got to get this to more people." So then I wrote the book, and that's available for anybody because the entire training is in that book.
Yeah.
It's not just sort of a overview or whatever. The entire training that I give people individually, and they're training with me one-on-one. And so that's kind of the background of how this came about. And then the definition I use, and there's many definitions that one could use for conscious dating, but the definition I like to use is conscious dating is knowing what you want and need for partnership, and then standing for having those wants and needs met, and then being committed to responsible, non-harming, honest ways of relating throughout the process of getting to know a potential partner and ongoingly. And so in that definition, when I work with people, there's usually something in your dating practices where you're a little off. You're either not clear on what you really want and need, or you do know, but you're not standing for it. You're not really standing for it. And that has a lot to do with self-love. And then the whole practice of conscious dating, of needing to be responsible with yourself and others, and non-harming with yourself and others, and really honest. And so this is a very proactive, directive body of work. This is very different. And one of those practices is that early on, once you know you're attracted to each other and you like each other, and there are the basics of your core values are in place, and you really kind of need a few dates to kind of figure that all out a little bit.
Totally.
And but once you know that, then you want to know each other's intentions. It's sometimes you ask on the first date, and sometimes it's the fifth date. It's not a formula, and it's not a set of rules. It's a individual person by person basis experience.
Yes.
But at some point in the early stages, you find out what are their intentions, and what are the other person's intentions, because you need to know if you're on the same page. You know, do you want to just date around? Do you want just a friends with benefits? Do you want a life partner? And it's really become very un-PC to be able to say, I really want to be married. I really want to have a family. And so I encourage listeners to give yourself permission if that's the truth. And just be brave in the early stages of dating someone that you are really getting attached to, really liking, and find out what they are seeking. And if they don't know, they're going to be figuring that out on your heart.
Yeah.
Which can and cannot always work. So, but a lot of times when people don't really know what they want, they will be practicing and discovering with your heart. And so you can have proactive conversations, and there's handouts in the books that support that, of getting to know each other that helps set and the focus of your intentions together.
Yeah.
And are we just going to date around? Are we going to date other people at the same time? Are we going to exclusively date with the intention of really getting to know, are we right for each other? Or are we just definitely going to exclusively date because we really do feel we're right for each other, and we're just going to hit the decks running and see if we really can make this work? So that's in the standing for. And so in conscious dating, it's really a proactive, directive body of work. It's not a, I'm dating, I had one client, she'd been dating this one guy for 6 months, and she didn't know what he wanted. And of course they were having sex, and of course they were all connected, and she finally got brave and asked him, and he was like, yeah, I want something committed. Then he broke it off with her, like within a few weeks of that question. Of course, she got scared asking that question, like, we'll see, it ended. And then he turned around and got married right away with someone else. So it seems like a scary thing maybe to ask that, but at the same time, you don't want to be dating someone who will not commit, because that's a big pattern out there in conscious dating, unconscious dating practices, is people... particularly the unconscious dating, is the whole thing of fear of commitment. So you want to find out, are they in a position to commit? If they're not, because they don't know, or because they're just out of a relationship, or just out of a marriage with children, those are all very tenuous time frames where people could or could not possibly be committed. And so it's really important to understand where someone is, because without commitment, you really can't co-design your relationship. You just can't.
Co-design, I love that.
Yeah, because it is a co-designing. Relationships are designed.
I talk about them. I even just had this conversation with a client yesterday. I said, well, what are the agreements of your relationship? Everybody's agreements are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I do with couples is I ask them, what are your agreements? Do you have any in writing? And in 27 years, I've never met a couple that put their agreements in writing.
Wow.
And most of them are implied and hoped for.
Yes.
And so when you don't understand what you're both going to agree to, and it's individualized, then you really, it's a crapshoot. It's just what the person organically gives instead of what your intentions are together.
Well, and it makes me kind of like, as you phrase it in that way, it makes me think of how ironic it is that like we have contracts for everything, right? Like to even like to go see a massage therapist and come do a session with me with, it's like we have all these agreements being made, like this is what's going to happen. This is what's going on, But yet when we're making, in my opinion, the biggest commitment of our life, it's like, we should probably be pretty clear, but you're right. I mean, it's the biggest point of vulnerability. Absolutely. Hands down. Yeah. Also, in my opinion, the biggest point of opportunity for transformation, because in partnership, I feel like our big vulnerabilities come up and we're able to see them and start shifting them if we choose, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is one of the most important relationships. If you're really wanting the beloved relationship experience, and the soulmate experience, it's going to be your most important relationship because you give everything to that relationship, your heart, body, mind, and soul. And it's even more demanding than your children's relationship. And you'll do anything for your children. And so with the beloved relationship, it's very, very demanding.
Yeah.
And it's why people have trouble, because they don't understand what are some of the key demands of a person in a beloved relationship. And one of those demands is you really, really need to love yourself. And I know that's very cliche in many ways in the self-help and transformation circles, but it really, really does matter. What is the bandwidth of your understanding of who you are?
Yes.
Because that influences how much you're going to know what you want and need.
Yes.
And with all creations, and in this co-designing of relationship, with all creations, you are needing to know what you want and need to be able to move anything forward. And see, the thing is people have their wants and needs. There's like a big stack of wants and needs coming into a relationship 24/7. But the ability to deliver on those wants and needs is very itty bitty. It's about an inch tall to something that's more like 20 inches tall in wants and needs. And I always kind of use my hands as a visual. Here's 20 inches wide of wants and needs, and here's the relationship's ability at 1 inch to deliver. Because you're new and you're discovering, and you may not have a full toolkit on how to be a beloved. And so it's really a trainable event.
Yeah.
It's something you want to get trained in. You want to
choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to read about it. You want to explore it, because it's not a given in our family systems and our school systems that we are trained or know how to be a beloved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's right.
I ask the listeners to think for themselves for a moment. Did someone sit you down and clearly define what is going to be asked of you in your marriage life, in your married life, in your partner life?
Yeah.
And if you didn't get that organically through a Leave It to Beaver type of existence, then you got to go get trained. And there's no shame in that. It's a really healthy thing to learn conflict resolution, to learn to deal with diversity, to learn how to dismantle any punishing behaviors that you might act out if you don't get your wants and needs met. To also really get the clarity on what it is you really want and need. So that's a real important practice. And then how to take care of yourself emotionally, to take care of your heart. It's a very different practice when you're dealing with emotional content. And emotional content is flying between two hearts all the time.
Yes.
And you have to know how to speak that language.
Yeah.
And it's all trainable, and that's the good news. That's the fun part. And that's the fun part of my job. I never get exhausted from it. I love this work. It's so much fun.
It makes, I'm thinking about something that you were just mentioning too, like the importance of being clear about what you want and your intentions early, and I think I've seen that fear so much, especially in my peer group, because I'm in my late 20s, and it's been fascinating as I've shifted, and I've been blessed to date some really interesting and great men that also had some challenges in my 29 years. And in the last year or so, as I just got more and more clear about, no, really, who am I? What am I about? And as I also got healthier, because I had a lot of my own stuff to work through, it's been a really beautiful process, just like being able to the concept that's coming to me is almost date with integrity, because I'm super clear. Like, I started building my business so eventually I could run it from home and raise my children. Therefore, I am very clear if I'm dating someone, like, oh yeah, I'm having babies. So like, if you don't want that, nice to meet you.
Yes, you're really cute, but right? I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. And it brings me to another concept, because I teach core values a lot. And I usually encourage and help people identify their top 3 core values. And I feel like we also have one that kind of resonates the strongest. And for me, it's respect. Yeah. And with that said, I also encourage my clients to make sure they are in alignment with what they are claiming their core values to be. Not only are people showing those values reflecting back to them, but are they representing those values? So AKA, am I being respectful if that's my primary core value?
Yeah.
And it makes me really think of times where in relationships, thinking of like, am I really respecting my partner? Because part of respect is letting them go if we know that it is not going to be moving forward, and that's what the other person wants.
Yeah, and I like a lot of what you've just said, a couple things. One is letting people go, and you may still really love them.
Oh, and it's the hardest. I can attest. Like,
Yeah.
I had to break up with someone that I was madly in love with. We were in love with each other, but it was so clear we were toxic, and it just wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the word, the ontological meaning of respect, to respect, to look again. And that's really a wisdom in action practice in a love relationship where you take a step back and you look at what's really going on here. And so it's so important to know the big picture of something while you're dealing with the details of a particular infraction or issue that's between you, that you look at the big picture of who a person is and what they provide while you're sorting through things. And then also while you're doing the sorting through, that you just don't get lost in the details so much. And it's important that you set a big picture together. What is this big picture that we can reference when we're caught in the mires of the details sometimes? So it's having a connection to both. I'm going to deal with the details. I'm not going to pretend, we're just all great, we're all perfect, nothing's wrong. And at the same time, not get so lost in the details, because people can lose sight of either. They're either not dealing with the issues at hand and being a little Pollyanna, or they're getting lost in dealing with the details and they're really forgetting, why are we here? Why are we together? So respecting is a big part. And when couples come to me, I usually check in, kind of do a meter read on trust and respect. Because if trust and respect is lost, usually emotional safety and security and intimacy is gone as well.
Yeah.
And so those are the first two recoverables in a relationship, is get the trust and the respect back in place. And my definition of trust and being a trustworthy person is that your actions and your words are aligned consistently over time. And so when you think about that for yourself, where am I inconsistent? Then you might be showing up as an untrustworthy person. Or am I dating someone who's showing up inconsistently? And it breaks trust. Trust is an energy that's like glass. It can shatter quickly.
Yeah.
And don't you know people that you absolutely love, but you don't quite trust?
Yes.
And so trust can be broken very, very quickly. Whereas love is a bouncy energy. And this is something I've learned from my spiritual teacher, is love's bouncy. And it can bounce out and bounce back and bounce out and back and bounce back. And at times, the ball can drop. You can actually lose the bounce of love, and it can be dropped if too much untrustworthy behavior kicks in. So what, in conscious dating context, I have a red flags list in the book, and because a lot of people, communicate about, I don't know when to leave, and everybody deserves love, right, Cindy? And I'm like, absolutely. And at the same time, there are certain activities that threaten a relationship. And it's really kind of good to know what those are for you. And you can see historical patterns of people you date. You can see some of the experiences of influences of who you've lived the majority of your life with, and patterns that influence why you're attracted to certain people that have certain red flag behaviors. So it's important to know what those are. And conscious dating is an in-depth process. It's not a fly-by-night set of rules. I do A, B, C, D, booty boo, I'm all done. It's just not like that. It's a big commitment because it's a big committed relationship. And so you want to invest in it. And it's why the divorce rate is so high, because people don't invest enough in the foundational training to become a better man, better woman, to become a partner, to be able to be someone who can deliver in that configuration of relationships. So, and again, to double back, that's why it's so important to know who you are and what you're really wanting to be involved in. And a lot of times when I work with people in this course training, is they come in, they definitely want a partner, and then they see that they really need to support their self-love practices. They kind of need to do a little heart work and clear the past so that they're more clear-hearted and ready for the accountabilities of loving another person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that too, the accountabilities of loving another person.
Yeah, you have to really be ready to grow and change, to understand the bandwidth of your ability to give and be caring.
Yes.
It's a different kind of giving, to be caring in your giving.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can be generous with things, but they don't put a lot of care in what they provide. And caring is, it's getting more and more missing in the world as we get lost in our technological distractions. And just how many people get birthday cards anymore? How many people, get, phone calls from friends much? We get a little text and maybe a quickie email. I mean, there's some cultural shifts that are happening that's impacting our relationship with intimacy.
Yes, and it really takes me to like how the concept of self-care has been twisted. It's like, I'm just taking care of myself. It's like, no, you're actually kind of being a selfish jerk is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of correlates with what you're talking about is like the balance, right? That word's so overused right now, but between really making sure we're taking care of and honoring ourselves and knowing that in relationships, whether it's friendships, family relationships, partnerships, like we also have the responsibility to nurture those.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that whole thing of, I'm just taking care of myself when it really is, I'm really just unavailable. We have to really be available. And see, here's the deal with dating. When we date someone, we give undivided attention. And man, don't we love that? We love that. And here's the deal. Even when you get together and you're fully committed and you're maybe living together or you're married and you're having a family, that desire for undivided attention doesn't go away. The need for it doesn't go away. But we get lost in the to-do list of life and living. And that's when couples can start to separate a little bit because they give up the practices of undivided attention. And it's so important, if you hear anything from me, it's so important to preserve that. Preserve that in practice. And that's not just date night. And that's cool. That's cool to have those pings in the calendar and things to look forward to, in your life that's full. But you must nurture and feed.
Well, it makes me think of how are you consciously connecting?
Yes.
And it's because that's a practice that with my clients, I'm like, okay, one of the first and most important critical things we have to do is create our conscious connection with spirit every day, whatever that looks like, whether it's putting your feet on the floor, breathing 3 times, whether it's pulling cards, saying a prayer. I don't care what you do. Just do something.
Yeah.
But it's the same with relationships and partnership, right? How are you consciously connecting to that individual? And as healers, we know that we also have to be in integrity with our energetic connections, right? Like connecting consciously, asking permission, releasing. But I feel the same is true in relationships of all sorts. Again, how am I consciously connecting with this person, especially my partner, and giving them, for me, it comes back to respect, right? Of that undivided attention. Yeah.
I like to encourage people to go for authenticity, to be authentic about what you're thinking and feeling, instead of it has to be a certain set of thoughts and feelings. Because sometimes people, they don't understand that it's more about what's authentically working me, what's going on, and what are some of the emotional connection, emotional processing practices.
Yeah.
Because some people get scared off with the term or the idea or concept of emotional processing. They think it's just about a complaint fest. And that's not it. Yes, you might need to air your grievances or your issues to get it off your chest, to get it exposed, to actually speak it, to get to the higher truth of something. It takes some time sometimes in conversation. But then it's to get to the solution work together. And that's really bonding work. When we conquer something together, it's very healing, it's very nurturing and bonding. And we go, well, if we can do it over here, we can do it over there. And it's like, it's self-enrolling. when you conquer something together as a couple. And most people come with unfinished business from their past, hurts and sorrows and broken hearts. And we carry all that content into our beloved relationships. All of that does surface at some point.
Yeah.
And so if you have a container and practices to be able to consciously deal with that in an adult manner, then you really thrive. And I've proved this with hundreds of couples, and how if you just had some key emotional clearing, processing, strengthening, understanding practices, couples thrive. But at the core of that is being authentic to what's really going on, not withholding, because that's when couples get into danger, or when certain subject matters become taboo.
Sure.
That becomes a very dangerous practice, and some couples have that. And that's one of the things I check in on. Is there any subject that's like too hot to handle between the two of you? Well, we can't talk about sex, or we can't talk about the in-laws, or we can't talk about money. We always fight, and so we just don't even talk about it anymore. You know, the cleaning of the house, something as simple as that, you know, can be the, you know, the odd couple syndrome kind of thing. And so you learn how to face issues. I call the 4 F's of fear. You know, we know about flight, we know about fighting, and we know about freezing deer in the headlights. Well, I like the fourth one. That's the one I teach, which is facing, is facing your fears. And the more you face them, the less they have any power over you. It's like skeletons in the closet. You open the closet and go, I'm going to look at you. I'm going to look you in the eye.
Yeah.
And it just crumbles. It doesn't have any weight anymore.
Yeah.
So facing fears is a big practice between conscious couples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to share a little bit about kind of what I sort of call the pitfalls of unconscious dating, because people kind of need to know some of the trouble they might get into while they're dating their fine people.
Sounds good. But tell us about that. Tell us about the unconscious dating practices.
Some key ones to just be aware of, and also maybe to acknowledge, I've done some of that. I've done some of those. And that there's ways to course correct around them. So one of the things that happens a lot is leading only with love and attraction, leading, into a love relationship with, it's just, I'm attracted, we're attracted to each other. We must be right for each other. And you want that. Absolutely, you do want it. So, and it's important. And if it's missing, it's hard to connect. You could be dating someone a few dates and going, I'm just not feeling the buzz. And if that's not there, it will, you kind of hang in there, because sometimes it pops in, down the road. But if you're only leading with attraction, then that's a little dangerous. It's important, but at the same time, you want to know about other things, other qualities, other abilities. Commitment obviously is one of them, but you want to know, is this a solid person emotionally? What's their background? Do they have a background with a lot of angst and they've done nothing about it? Because they're going to bring that to you. They're going to bring that to your bed and your kitchen, and they just will. So to know that, to go beyond just attraction. And then there's the not telling the truth. Some people just are so afraid to really be authentic from day one and just tell the truth. So it's about wants and needs.
Wild, isn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we have a life experience. Everybody has a life experience of when they've told the truth, they've been punished in some manner.
Well, and what I've also noticed is that a lot of people simply don't know what their truth is.
Yeah.
Right? But that's also what we're talking about, the unconscious concept, right?
Yes.
I mean, one of the biggest kind of premises that I operate from is like, know your individual truth. It is not the same as mine or probably your friends or whatever. Like, what is really true for you as an individual?
Right. And when you're unpracticed on knowing what you want and need, I tell people, get one of those causes bracelets and put it on your wrist for a while, because you can go in and out of the shower, and just every time you kind of look down at it, just take an assessment of, what do I want and need in this moment? If you're unpracticed and you really don't know, and you're always deferring or acquiescing to others' wants and needs and directives, then you need to practice it. And you need to practice it on a daily basis. And it can be as simple as, well, what do I feel in this moment? Well, I'm a little hungry. I'm a little thirsty. I'm kind of tired. I'm going to get to bed early tonight. Whatever that may be, you just take stock. Or I'm about to go in this meeting. What is it that I really want and need in this meeting? What is it that I really want to have happen? Or I'm going to go out on this date. And what do I want to have happen in this date? What do I want to find out and discover? And going in with real intention instead of just, well, I don't really know. I'm just going to, figure it out as I go. Because with conscious dating, for me in this practice, is supporting people getting clear on what it is that they are wanting for life happiness with another before they go out and start dating. So that when you're vetting people, you're finding out, do they have the top 20 gotta haves? Do they have the 50 or more traits and qualities that I really need for relationship happiness? And that takes a lot of soul searching. And when I give people that exercise of, list out your wants and needs of core happiness and what do you want? And sometimes I get a list back of 12 items. I said, really? You only want 12 things? No, go back and do that assignment. And that's why I tell people 50 or more traits and qualities. And then out of that, there's your top 20 that you got to have that isn't, if it's not there, then you're going to walk.
20. Wow.
Off of 50.
Yeah.
Because you want them all. And, some are, negotiable and some are...
Are the top 20 negotiable or no?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And those are the walk-in paper
It's interesting.
ones.
20, I thought it was like 5 to 7. So 20, I'm like, wow, I got to get more specific.
Yeah. And I have people really focus. And then they can go back and look at former partners or current partners.
Yes.
Is anything missing in your top 20?
Yeah.
And I have people come back and, 8 to 12 are missing in their top 20. And I said, can you see why you're in pain?
And how do you help? This might sound, well, how do I even say that? How do you help people discern between wants and, for lack of better terms, shallowness?
Yeah, like,
or does, like, if someone says I want or need a guy with green eyes, like, is that valid, or is that, you know what I mean?
Well, when I talk to people and support people around the physical stuff, I said, it's fine to say you want someone who's healthy. It's fine if you truly have a particular body style. It's just a little dangerous sometimes because your beloved might have picked a particular set of green eyes or blue eyes or whatever. But sometimes people really know what they're attracted to. And so that's a tricky area of appearances. And it's more about, am I attracted versus they got to look like this, this, and this.
Right.
And
well, and for some people like me, like personality absolutely literally changes someone's appearance for good or bad.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we know that when people don't have self-confidence and then they get confidence, and you see it in some of the makeovers and how that builds confidence when they take pride in their presentation. And that's one of the responsibilities of love is that you do take pride and attentiveness to your body care practices. You want to be clean. You want to brush your teeth and floss it too. I'm a former dental hygienist. Floss your teeth. Just floss the ones you want to keep. That's all you have to remember. And so yeah. Now shallowness, it can be revealed pretty quickly.
Got it. Yeah.
If you're really only focused on, appearances, or if you're only focused on status, and this is if you're identifying with who you hang with and you're talking about who I know so-and-so, or I'm connected to such and such group or whatever. And you'll know that that's a little more egoically driven connectedness. I have value because I'm connected to this person. I met Robin Williams once, I must be great, and it can be like that. So the shallowness, most people that come and work with me don't engage in that. And I think will be attracted to the book.
Yeah.
So I kind of mentioned earlier, one of the things is not knowing what your partner's intentions are. This is a really, really big thing. That's why I underscore it, is you really got to know what people are up to. and the depth of their self-knowledge of what they're wanting and needing, because they will be figuring that out on your time and your dime.
And to take another layer, I'm curious how you feel about not only knowing what you want and what your intentions are, but also just knowing where you're at energetically and knowing that you'll potentially attract that energetic match too. You know, and I've experienced that where I was still holding on to some shady energy. Like I knew that I could be shady. I knew I could be sneaky. I knew I could be manipulative. And I kept that as a very strong option, let's say.
Yes.
And so when I'm like, well, I want this and this, and I present like this and this, and I'm this great, blah, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I attracted someone that presented like, oh yeah, I want those things too, and da da da, and oh my gosh, we're so compatible. When really, guess what? They actually had a lot of shady, manipulative, sketchy energy, right? And so it really helped reflect back to me like how much of that was I still carrying, and that's a hard realization, I think. And for people that follow my show or follow me specifically in my website, like they know that I have a history when I was younger with addiction and an eating disorder and a lot of early trauma. And what we do is we create these survival skills, right?
Yeah.
And some of that was being able to manipulate situations and control things, you know, and have some what I call kind of sketchy energy sometimes, but it was to serve a need, right? So now in the past 5 years, I've had to really look at like, okay, that served me. Thank you. How do I shift it and shift the energy that I'm really kind of putting off and vibrating with so I can attract people that are more similar to the new reality that I'm wanting to create for myself.
Yeah. Well, how I term that, you call it shady energy. I call it emotional adaptation. And
that sounds a little nicer, kind of.
Emotional adaptations are very integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the practices that I like to work with is helping people around belief work.
Yes.
Because you're talking about an integrated negative belief structure at its core. That's what that means.
Yeah.
And it influences your choices, your decisions, and your actions. And so in knowing what your negative beliefs are, it's so important to call them up and have a process on how to eliminate them and shift them into the belief structure you want to be holding and having. Because some of these things are inherited, either influences of external authorities around us or cultural. There's a lot of influences that make up negative belief structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a foundational body of work that has to happen if you want to really have a sustained, happy, healthy relationship.
Yes.
You got to know what your negative pieces are that are running the show. And that's exactly everything that you described just now.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it, is knowing what your negative beliefs are. The other thing is having sex on the first date. That's an unconscious practice. So you get real attached real soon, real quick, because sex attaches. And and I think I said this before last time, it's not a moral issue. It's an energetic issue. Because then it's like you're in. You're just in energetically with the person. And if you don't have clear enough boundaries or clear enough clarity about what you're really wanting and needing, it's hard to extract yourself out. You can get really pulled in, possibly, with someone who can't provide. And I tell people, would you knowingly have sex with someone, certainly unprotected sex, and a lot of people have unprotected sex still, and on a first date. I'm telling you,
it's just crazy.
I've seen it again and again and again.
Yeah, it's true.
And would you knowingly do that with someone who is HIV positive? Wouldn't you want to know? How do you know? How are you going to possibly know? Or has an STD? You can't know that until you come together and do mutual testing, currently. And I encourage people to do testing and to use testing more as your safe sex practice. You got to know what boogies are happening, inside your body.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to have a record of every 6 months. I've been dating, and every 6 months I do a
screening.
A screening. And so, that's a really neat kind of file to offer and say, look, I am clean, and you can count on that. That's one of the responsible practices of conscious dating. And so it doesn't mean you can't be sensual and sexual and have some fun and play around. But when you really start commingling bodily fluids, you got to know who's on the other side and what their history is. So it's asking about histories. a lot of people, get into the don't ask, don't tell. And it's just too dangerous. And that is an unconscious dating practice. So
well, and it makes me wonder, I feel like there's kind of a rise in the concept of people just really looking at sex as a physical only act. And I mean, I don't resonate with that truth, but because I think it's absolutely a spiritually binding action as well. But it makes me wonder, like, what would you say to someone that is like, oh, it's just sex, it's just a physical act? Like the concept of the energetic connection or the attachment, they're like, oh, I don't get attached, it's just sex.
Well, that's something they've convinced themselves of. And, I would teach them a little bit about the chakra systems, the energy systems, and bring them more into a spiritual awareness of how we are energy beings, that our energy field, all you do is put your arms straight out to the side, and your energy field is at least that wide. And some people's energy fields can fill a stadium.
Yeah.
And you know that when you're in a restaurant and all of a sudden your head just turns when someone walks in the restaurant, and you don't even know why.
But you're
reacting to their nervous system coming into the space and what their resonance is. And so you teach people a little bit about their impact.
Yeah.
And that's a big, big thing in a beloved relationship, is a lot of people don't understand their impact. And you impact someone just by entering a room, and whatever your states of emotional thoughts, your current worries and stresses and states of being, all that is influencing your vibratory, energetic output.
Yes.
And so by just entering a room, and this, like when sometimes you go into, the grocery store and people are being kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where certain spiritual practice, I love chanting for that purpose. I can go in, feel the weirdness. We're coming up to a Mercury retrograde at the end of the month, and it's going to get a little weird for some people. It just is. And you can chant. You can just chant a mantra or a prayer or a song that you know, and see the energy shift. And so it's knowing certain practices on how to deal with energy in that regard. So,
yeah. Cool. So as we're starting to kind of wind down of this part 2, I'm curious what a few steps that someone can take to become a more conscious dating person would be. Like, what are a few clear steps, or what are the most imperative that you think someone could really embrace to step further into this?
Okay. Well, then that's kind of like my 7 pillars of conscious dating.
Aha.
So first and foremost, know what you want and need for relationship happiness. Take the time, pull up a legal pad and a pen and, in your jammies, on your bed, a couple Saturdays in a row, and just really write out what you know you need, what you want, what you desire. And I work with the 3 C's of clarity, commitment, and communication. You need clarity, and you really need commitment to build anything. Think about building a building. If you don't have the commitment from your architect to draw the plans, you're not going to get your building built. If you don't have the commitment of your contractor to go get all the permits, you're not going to get that building built. And then communication. Relationship lives inside of communication. So if you're not very facile in understanding how to communicate in a love relationship, get trained. Get my book. Read about this. Go to the libraries and bookstores and see what book falls off and hits you on the head. Really, really learn a lot about communicating, conflict resolution, how to really deal with emotional diversity. Standing for those wants and needs to be met. This is the self-love foundation.
Yeah.
I deserve this. I can have this. I can create this. I believe it's possible in that man, in that woman. So that's really important. Telling the truth about your intentions, your histories, and who you really are and what you really need. Just being really, really honest about that. So that you aren't in a place of deficit or doing without, because that will bring pain.
Yeah.
That will just brings a lot of pain. Going slow and getting to know, doing the safe sex practices and maturity. If you're attracted to each other, it's going to be fun. Have a courtship.
Yeah.
It's not just an old-fashioned Victorian era thingy. And I know that a lot of it was, for a purpose back there, but there's a purpose to a courtship. So I need to know who you are. I need to know the test of your mettle over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so go slow and get to know. The big thing of acting maturely, emotionally, and non-harming ways. If you don't get what you want and need right away, it takes a while. I talked about, you come in with a stack of wants and needs, and the early stages of a relationship, it takes a while. I tell people it takes 5 years to teach and guide your partner how to love and care for you.
Wow.
And it really takes 8, but actually it's 12. It's really 20. But nobody wants to hear that in the early stages of dating someone new. They go, I have to wait that long. Well, no, some of it's coming in along the way. You're building something. You're co-designing it together. But it really does take a good 5 years to really get some of the core basics really humming, between the two of you. And so it's an important thing to pay attention to. The self-love practices, releasing any fears you have around love or being loved or being lovable or worthy of love. You gotta mine it. You gotta go down and you gotta lift that stuff up and out so that there's nothing in between. And a lot of us need to learn how to love with an open, broken heart. And that's John Wellwood's quote. And I love that because everybody that's, in the love game usually has had some kind of broken heart. And so we have to learn to continue to love even in that, even with those histories, and not let that dictate our choices. It's not love that lets us down. It's the not knowing how to deal with the problems associated with loving. And a lot of people blame love. I'll never love again. I'll never, let a person in again. It's like, no, don't turn away from love.
Yeah.
And so you want to really face what are your fears, what are your hurts, doing that past work. And then learning ways to collaborate with spirit because you're not alone.
Right.
You're not alone. And you can really call upon, I've worked shamanically for over 20 years, and I've traveled on the other side for information and healing on behalf of the client. And there's so many spirit helpers on the other side with their arms folded, essentially, energetically, that are going, they never ask. They never call me in, and I'm a part of their committee. And you have a whole committee on the other side. There's more to life than just this physical universe.
Absolutely.
And when you really get that and you're really connected up with that, you can really call upon the support of help me heal my heart. Help me connect up with my soulmate. I have a whole meditation process in the book that has you connect up with the soul of your beloved before you meet. I did that with Thomas. I connected with his soul. I had a list in my journal book of who this guy was down to a T.
Yeah.
One of the fun pieces is I got that he had an accent. And I had just been to Australia and New Zealand, and I thought, oh, maybe he's an Aussie, or maybe he's a Brit, or I just thought, oh, cool. And when I met him, I heard his accent on the second day I was with him, and I went, oh my God, he's from Jersey. He's a Jersey boy, and he had this Jersey accent. He said my maiden name, Kavanaugh, and I went, oh, he's a Jersey boy. But he had his accent, and I had that all down, and tall, sensitive brown eyes, and all these great things that came in.
Was that something that you had wanted or something that you'd been shown was going to show up?
That was something I was shown and told.
So I think that's an important thing to just touch on briefly too, is that concept that the list that you're talking about making is not just all I want. It's also taking the time to be kind of in meditation and receive
yes.
But what will this
Yes.
What will this look like?
Yes.
What is this? And I appreciate you saying that because when I always get excited when kind of the journey that I go on is reinforced by an expert, because I was shown about a year ago to start doing some of my we'll say call-ins like that. When I was thinking about partnership, I was like, well, what am I being shown I need next, or I need right now?
Yeah.
And then I would just listen and receive information. I'd be like, really?
Yeah.
And then it would happen. Like that
Yes.
person would show up. I'm like, oh
Yes.
my word. And I totally did need them at the time,
Yes.
right? Because for me, I knew that I needed to work
Yeah.
some stuff out,
Yes.
you know? And so I just wanted to really nail that down too, that concept of also like being open to what is spirit showing you as one of the characteristics or 10 of the characteristics
Yes.
that your partner might have, because that also could be a clue.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the guys I was attracted to in the early stages of dating was usually someone who was about the same height as me, and because I liked putting my arm around their neck, and so I kind of was attracted to people like that. And then when I met Thomas, he was taller than me, and being 5'10" and a tall woman, since from birth, I came out of my mother at 5'10", and it was really a pleasant surprise where I kind of felt small for the first time, and it was really neat. Just his brawn. He was a football player, and high school and college, and I didn't realize that was a body type I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And of course his touch, just his hand, to this day, 31 years down the road now, he could put his hand on the, small of my back, and I just melt.
Yeah.
And so you don't know sometimes what you might be wanting or really needing
That's right.
in that person. And so, yeah, there's a lot of be open, and they're
Yes.
going to bring strengths and talents and abilities and all the things that we have duked out and worked out in our relationship has just made me a better consultant. And, I had other ideas of how relationship could go down.
Sure.
But we worked them all out, and it's really built a strong consultant in me, and a strong wife in me, and just character, just, things that are unexpected. And he brought me a daughter that I always wanted.
Yeah.
So, I thought maybe I would have kids, but he came, he had a daughter already, and she's my heart daughter. And so, I got that as a gift. And I was really fine with not birthing my own children. And so that was...
Did you have to do a lot of searching to know if that was true for you?
Oh, yeah. I had like 2 years there. I was 40, and I wanted to have a child before I was 42. And those 2 years, I was losing my hair. I was stressed out. I was like, yes, no, maybe, should I have a kid? Should I, I'm not ready, I'm not mature enough, and, all this stuff. And then I realized, you know what? I don't need to go there. I know for some women, they need to really make peace with that, and that's really okay.
If that's really true for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like, I feel like that's one of the trickiest ones I see a lot of women with is like, oh, well, maybe I'd be okay not having kids, when it's just like every cell of their being you can see wants to be a mom.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
That's a big truth teller.
Yes.
Do I want kids? Do I not want kids? And, you got to get clear on that. That's, Yeah. Indeed. I look forward to your kitties.
I've still got some time. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just curious, like, what, if you were to kind of summarize or wrap up all these huge topics we've been talking about,
Yes.
well, like, what are the biggest points that you really want to drive home for listeners?
It's such a great question, and there is so much to be said about that. Just get clear before you go out there. It'll save you a lot of heartache. Now, you can learn with, the process of getting to know people. You truly can. But the more you get clear up front, the less you're going to have mishaps and poor choices. Really go slow and really give yourself the courage and the permission and the responsibility of love to yourself to really get to know this person. Really just say, hey, I'm someone who kind of goes slow and gets to know. And are you cool with that? Check in, check out with them, that's something that they're up for. Some people aren't. To me, that's a sign of maturity. Someone who's willing, they know enough about you and are interested enough about you. And definitely expand your medicine bundle of self-love practices, because you need different things at midnight than at 6 p.m. or 8 a.m. You got to have a variety of practices. You can't just go meditation and that solves all. You can't just go, well, I'll walk in nature. Well, what about when it's storming and it's midnight?
Exactly.
Well, I'll call a friend. Well, what about if it's 2 a.m.? Do you
Yeah.
have a friend that you can call at 2 a.m.?
Yeah.
You know, so you have to have self-care practices that's in a variety of choices for a variety of needs. And so spend time discovering what those are. And how I define those is those are the things that when you do them, you course correct, you rebalance, you reconnect with your soul, your higher self.
Yeah.
Those are those types of practices. And just never give up on love. Let love lead, but learn what else you need to be a great partner.
Yeah.
Learn to be a great partner and learn to stand for having one for yourself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Cindy. How can people find out more information about you?
You can go to my website, which is www.designingaccess.biz. And all the information of all the different projects that I provide clients and different book signing events that will be coming up. And so, you know, all the local people can come meet me, come say hi, come say, hey, I heard you on Jen's show. And I'd love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, thank you for being here. And thank you for listening to Information and Inspiration with Jen Julius. For more information about me and to check out some of my previously recorded shows, you can go to jenjulius.com, or you can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Jen Julius Coaching. Thank you. And until next time, take care.